Hello everybody, I am Ben from Team Panic, and today we're going to be looking at how my ant weights did at the March ARC meet. Now, first and foremost, we need to talk about some prep going into the event. Downforce started and ended the day like this. Basically, I did not have a whole lot of prep time going into this event, and I prioritized my beta weight, Annie, are you okay, over getting downforce going, because I knew that I was going to have at least one robot in the ant weights anyway, so I wanted to have the beta weights going as well. So if you didn't see it, I do have already on my channel how my beta weight did at this month's meet, so you can go back and have a look at that. I'll leave a link down in the description. On the flip side, this is a party was doing pretty well, had just come off of 2 back-to-back wins. One in Adelaide last month and then one in Melbourne also last month, and was doing pretty well. So I decided to see just how well the chassis is going to hold together with no maintenance at all for 3 straight events. So I decided to do absolutely nothing to This Is a Party and put it straight back into the arena to see how we go and how it holds up with repeated fights, basically. With all of that said, Downforce is out of the running for today because it did not fight. It was not in any condition to fight. So we're only going to be talking about This Is a Party. So first up, This Is a Party first kind of sorta, which is a vertical robot that sometimes has a saw blade and sometimes has just an actual vert blade on it. It had been recently reprinted in carbon fiber, so I was quite worried about this. I was expecting it to be quite tough and quite a challenging fight. So let's take a look at how this goes. So, turns out carbon fiber is hard and brittle. So if you hit it and you manage to break it in any way, it just snaps. Which is what PLA is like. PLA is quite a lot like that as well. Anytime you hit it and break it, it just breaks. Stuff like ABS is impact resistant, it's not hard. So it resists impacts really well, but because it's not brittle and hard, when it gets hit, it usually has sections ripped out of it and not the whole thing breaks. So that's what happened there, is that carbon fiber is brittle hard, which means you break it and it just breaks. So I was able to knock huge chunks out of that robot, which I was quite surprised about. I did not think I would be able to get through 3D printed carbon fiber like that, but apparently we can, which is good. And that fight was won because his battery got exposed. So for those of you keeping track at home, that is 4, I think 4, it might be more than 4, but at least 4 fights that This Is a Party has now won because it's done enough damage to expose batteries, which that's quite an achievement. definitely not something I would have expected from this. Not something I definitely would have expected from its first couple of iterations. Those were never working at this level. So I'm quite happy with that. You obviously probably noticed there that the weapon blade was still unbalanced. I didn't have time to get a good prop balancer to do that. I did order my own prop balancer, but they shipped it all just kind of like in a plastic bag. And so when I got it, the actual balancy bit was all wobbly and wonky and useless, basically. So if you're getting a prop balancer, just a quick tip, don't buy them from eBay or China. Buy them from somewhere reputable that's actually going to ship them to you nicely, because otherwise you get something that's not going to work. Anyway, we're going to keep moving along with fights, and next up we're fighting Reaper. Now, Reaper, if you've been on this channel before, he is quite a tough, sturdy dustpan bot. We have thrown him all around the arena, and he just keeps going. So I'm pretty confident this is going to be a long fight and quite a difficult one. Yeah, so there you go. Reaper is just exceptional. I keep hitting it here, there, everywhere. It travels so far up, comes crashing back down on the ground, and just keeps going. I was very, very surprised by that. The two little prongs that he had on the front did keep me at bay for a little while, but obviously a couple of good hits on him managed to rip those off, which was then, left him a little bit more open for us to go in and do more attacking. At the end there, he ended up high-sided, and then obviously the pit opened in underneath him, and I pushed him on in. Yeah, so that was basically how I expected that fight to go. I did expect it to go a little bit longer though, because of course Reaper being Reaper, it usually doesn't break or anything, so it getting high-sided was just kind of good luck on my part and bad luck on his part, I guess. Yeah, but this is a party tracking quite well at this point in time. Alright, next up we have a newcomer. We are fighting a robot called the Punisher, which is just a big old wedge with some big wheels. So it's going to have a lot of pushing power. Well, that wasn't good. That was too much gyro, basically. So during that fight, obviously, I wasn't getting good hits on him. The bouncy nature of the weapon stack and everything meant that he was out-wedging me constantly, and I was getting a little bit frustrated by that, so I was changing my weapon speeds a lot, because there are certain weapon speeds where the wobble decreases and it stabilizes out a little bit. So I was trying to find one of those, and I had my weapon up way too high, and yeah, gyroed straight into the pit, which, I mean, sometimes that type of stuff just happens. I wish it didn't happen, because that was quite annoying. Up until that point, it's a pretty good fight. Like I said, he was getting under me quite a lot, but I did manage to knock off parts of his robot and was doing some damage. If I hadn't gyroed into the pit, it could have been a different outcome. But we'll never know because, of course, I drove it into the pit. So that was the thing that happened. Next up, we are fighting Slipstream, who is a robot that you have probably also seen before. It is a metal wedge robot, which is deceptively low to the ground. It looks like there is a gap between the wedge and the floor, but somehow there's not. And also, you know, with the wobbly boy going on, it doesn't really matter. If the wedge is semi-close to the ground, there's a 50-50 chance if I'm going to go underneath them or I'm going to bounce over top and go up on top of them. So, you know, wedges are always an interesting fight for me. Let's take a look at how this one goes. So that was an interesting fight. I did get some really good hits on him, which was nice. He had a loose wire somewhere, it seemed. So big hits were like jostling that wire loose and he would lose one side of drive. Then I'd hit him again and it would kind of kick that wire back into place and he'd suddenly get drive all over again. So there was a little bit of like, if I hit him and he loses that drive, do I hit him again? Do I not hit him again? What do I do? And there was one time where I like spun the weapon basically all the way down when he had that and just kind of pushed him around and it pushed the wire back into place anyway. So I was like, well, I guess we're just going to spin the weapon back up and just keep hitting him and take the free hit whenever the wire comes loose. Because that's basically what it is. When he's crab dancing around like that, I get a better shot at the back and the sides, which is where I'm going to do the most damage. So I just decided to kind of keep doing that. And then, yeah, he got his wheels back again, or his motor drive back again, and just sped into the pit, which is not something anybody ever wants to do, and it's always a little bit unfortunate, but in robot combat, and when there's a pit, or two pits in this case, it's bound to happen, people do it. Yeah, so there you go. That was that fight. That could have been a better fight on everybody's parts, I think, but it was what it was. So, with that all done, that is now the round robin group out of the way, and we're moving on through into the finals. But we're moving on through in second place from our round robin group. Punisher, the person that I drove into the pit, is going through in first place, and that means that we're fighting Shrapnel. So this is going to be an interesting fight. The last time we fought Shrapnel, he was running on an old chassis, and I managed to do the right amount of damage and split that chassis in half, or just kind of finalize the damage, I guess. This time around, I'm running an old chassis and he's running a brand new chassis. So this could be a very interesting fight. Let's take a look at how this goes. Whoa! We exploded! Okay, so what actually happened there? Because this is the big key thing. What happened there was a twofold error. So first and foremost, the weapon here is only held in with 2 bolts. There are 2 bolts right on the back which hold the weapon in place. Now, I'm pretty sure that I Loctited those in before the February meet. However, the repeated hits and the repeated wobbling eventually forced these things to loosen up and come out, even with the Loctite that I put on them. So during that fight, I actually lost one of those bolts pretty early. I didn't realize it was mine. I did see it on the ground while I was fighting, and it didn't twig that it was my weapon. If I'd realized that, I probably would have spun the weapon down a little slower and played the fight a little bit more conservative, but as it was, I actually spun the weapon up, trying to do more damage to him and knock him out and break the chassis open again like we did last time. So that meant that the weapon was only being held in with 1 bolt, and that bolt gave way right at the end there, but also the clip that holds the motor together also gave way. I think at the same time, maybe a little bit earlier in the fight, I don't know, I never managed to recover the clip. So this motor actually comes apart now, which is not good. So that's what happened there, is that the bolt gave way or at least loosened up just enough to allow the whole thing to wobble. When the whole thing could wobble, this, I think, may have interacted with the chassis, and there is a couple of chips in here that would indicate that that's what happened, that the weapon hit the chassis, and then that's just popped the weapon straight off, thrown it around the arena, and I've ended up upside down with guts hanging everywhere and a motor not actually attached to where it's supposed to be attached to. So as far as ways to lose, that was somewhat spectacular. And it also tells me that I possibly shouldn't be running these motors for 3 straight events, which is a good thing to know, I would say. It's also an indicator that I should probably be re-Loctiting everything on the motors every single event, which is, once again, good information to know. The other thing here, of course, is that we took a lot of damage from Shrapnel's spinner. Now, this side pontoon is always really thin and weak. It was designed that way on purpose. It was a weight-saving measure. It's literally just there for spinners to cut through so that they're not cutting through anything important, essentially. But Shrapnel did a lot more damage to that than I would like. He's actually put a snap in the back wall here, which means that he's starting to expose some of the stuff inside the robot, which is kind of scary, not very good. Yeah. It's good though. This is actually what I was wanting when I put the chassis back in for a 3rd straight event. I wanted to know where the failure points are, and now I do. Now I know that I need to Loctite my bolts every single event. I do need to make sure that I actually get the prop balancer, because I've borrowed a prop balancer now, so I need to prop balance my weapons properly. And I need to find some way to beef up this sidewall, because this is where Shrapnel and other big spinners are hitting me. So I actually do need to put the weight back into there and get that back up and running and working. So that was the semi-final fight, which means that we lost that, and we're now going to the 3rd place playoffs. Now, in the 3rd place playoffs, we are going to be versing Punisher. So the person that I lost to, the only person that I lost to in the round robin fight, and it was by an unforced error as well. So that's interesting. Hopefully this fight will go a lot better. Of course, though, the weapon is now on tenterhooks. I've bolted it back into place, but it's missing that clip, which means that, like it is right now, I can literally just pull the whole weapon out. So this we're going to have to be very, very careful about. Let's take a look at how this fight goes. Oh, it's another unforced error. It's another unforced error. That's 2 in one event against the same opponents. I mean, what are the odds of that? That's just, I'm not happy with that. I am very, very not happy with that. I really don't know what went on. I don't know how or why I ended up driving myself into the pit, but that is what happened. There was some good in that fight, though. I mean, I did manage to do more damage to him in this fight than I had in the previous fight, which I was kind of happy about. I mean, I was thinking that with the weapon motor kind of on tenterhooks like it is, that would not go my way or in my favor, and that I would do a lot less damage this fight than I did last fight. But I managed to break a huge hole in his chassis. Unfortunately, that was not where the battery was, so he was not disqualified. I think there was like an ESC kind of wedge just inside there. I was trying to hit that, but the weapon didn't get purchase on that, or any of the wires that were close to that hole. Once again, if those had been hit, it would have been a very, very different fight. But none of that happened. In actual fact, what happened is that we got 4th place. Yeah, 2 very silly unforced errors and 1 almighty amount of damage from Shrapnel is all it took. Yeah. So there you go. There's some things that I can still work on, and this is what happens every time I lose, is there are spots that I can work on, things that I can improve, things that I can fix, and now I have a maintenance plan for this robot. I know what things I need to change, what things I don't need to change, and then importantly know what I need to do before the start of every single event, every single competition, so that this is a party is running at 100% capacity every single time. So normally that'd be where I would end this video. However, considering that this chassis is basically trash, and I'm going to need to reprint this chassis, I figured it was about time that we put this as a party into a rumble, see how much more damage it can take, and see how much more damage it can dish out. So let's take a look at the rumble. We blew up again. Yep. And it was the same thing too. We lost the bolts and then the weapon contacted the chassis and bam, done. So we just need to make sure that we Loctite those bolts in place. That's basically it. We were doing pretty well though, considering that we were wobbling around, we had lost most of our wedge, all that kind of stuff. We're still throwing robots around left, right, and center. So on the whole, not too unhappy with that. Just need to make sure that these bolts get Loctited in. Obviously, I didn't have any time to actually Loctite these bolts back in place between the shrapnel fight and going through to the rumble. Those things were kind of very, very quick. And in fact, I didn't even charge the batteries in all of that time because there wasn't really time to do any of that. So it's surviving pretty well. It's doing pretty well. We do need a new chassis now because this one is totaled. But that is pretty easy and straightforward to do. I think I'll even do that off camera because I don't think you guys really need to see it. There won't be too many changes or anything to it. It will just be a brand new chassis with a new carbon fiber mount and everything will just keep going, I think. So yeah, there you go. A bit of a disappointing episode this time round. Yeah, definitely things that I could have done a lot better there, but such is life, I guess. So anyway, despite all of that, I hope you guys have enjoyed this one and I will see you in the next video.